so years, and more aggressively the last.
So a second agent.
So two,
my left,
and in fairness to them,
push the goddamn button.
Push the goddamn button.
You heard what she said.
So Rogan's kind of personal to me because I was a big fan. I started watching Rogan in about 2012, 2013, before anybody kind of knew who he was. I mean, he was an announcer for the UFC, which I'm a big fan of, or I used to be a big fan of. Now I'm a kind of a fan, but they've decided to go partisan, which is just ignorant as hell, but they've chosen to do it. I still watch the fights, but I watch them for the fights. Okay. So, but he was really like, in sports, there are commentators that are just commentators, and there are commentators that are amazing. And Joe Rogan was one of those. He was a commentator that basically told you what was going to happen before it happened. He helped you to understand the sport way better, and at the same time, he was entertaining. Tony Romo is like that for football. He's amazing because he helps you to understand what the quarterback's thinking, what the defense is planning on doing, all that stuff, even before it happens. So he was one of those guys, but he's also a guy who has reason for you to respect him greatly. He is a guy who has accomplished a lot. He's a world champion, I believe, in taekwondo, or a striking martial art. He He's a black belt in jujitsu, which you cannot get unless you earn it. He's an actor, and he was on an Emmy award-winning TV show for a while. And he's a comedian. Now personally, I never thought he was very funny as a comedian, but he is a doer. He gets shit done, and even before he changed his spots, he was worthy of admiration and respect. And so, a lot of that, is what I liked about Joe Rogan himself. But also, it was very evident to me that he cared about people at that time. He cared about what happened to people. He cared about, making people's lives better. He cared about the truth, right? He cared about delving into things that didn't look right, but not just doing it just to do it. There are people that just like conspiracies just to like conspiracies, and don't necessarily require any evidence for them. Well, he, in my opinion, wasn't one of those guys. He was a guy who looked into conspiracies because there was a reason to look into them. And the term conspiracy theory is ridiculous. I mean, it was turned into a pejorative because the CIA, who, speaking of architects, the CIA decided to make it a bad thing when they murdered JFK. So they kind of coined the term conspiracy theorist as a pejorative, when it's not really a pejorative. But my goal is to be a conspiracy factist, right? And look into conspiracies when there's evidence to look into them. So anyway, but in my opinion, he was one of those guys who looked into conspiracies when there was a reason to look into them. He was also interested in facts. Like, he was interested in finding new information about things. He had all these people from different walks of life, and this is when his show was completely apolitical. There was no political tint to it. It was just like, I'm going to have these guests on. I'm going to have this guest on. I'm going to have this expert on. I'm going to have this person on. Now, not everybody was an expert, right? There would be people who would be talking about conspiracy theories, or without any expertise or reason for us to believe them. But still, he had a lot of experts on in their field, and talked about different things that I was interested in. Hunting, and things like that. So he was at that time, in my opinion, someone to be well respected, and he cared about people, and we were very much in line in terms of how we felt about humanity. Now, this podcast is 100% not a political podcast. This podcast is about humanity. I've never cared about politics. The only time I ever started paying attention to it is when it became about our humanity, and that was about a decade ago when I saw that our humanity was changing and how we cared about each other was changing drastically. And I sounded the alarm to a lot of people around me, and they basically decided to choose their political persuasions versus looking at the facts and paying attention and admitting that our humanity was definitely under attack. So I've never been into politics. I'm only into what I need to be into to understand how we can make the world a better place for the most people. Now, back when I used to listen to Joe Rogan, his guest list was very different. It was filled with, he was in LA, right? So he had a lot of his friends on, and they were probably the most entertaining part, right? Because he would have comedians on. He would have Joey Diaz on a lot. And if you don't know who Joey Diaz is, he's a comedian, but he's also kind of been an actor and had played bit parts throughout in Hollywood for a long time. But I mean, this dude can tell a story, and I mean, he could be talking about going to the movies and make that shit sound like the best experience you've ever heard. So he would have like other comedians on, which, which was a great thing because he was basically platforming guys who didn't really have a platform, which I thought was admirable. He would have MMA athletes on, right? Because that's, that was his domain. He would have military adjacent people, hunters. He would have people who are special. He would have people like, I don't know if you know who David Goggins is, but he's a guy who basically doesn't seem to have a pain threshold. He just does superhuman fitness activities all the time. He would have this thing called a fight companion where he would watch the MMA fights and have his buddies on. And that was super entertaining because not only did we get to watch the fights, but we got to listen to him break the fights down with his crew, which was Brian Callen, Brian Schaub, and Eddie Bravo, and talk about another guy who's, I mean, he is he could have his own damn show. This dude, I mean, he's a super duper conspiracy theorist. Let me start there, meaning, and I'm talking about the pejorative type, where he can see a conspiracy in this damn regular old battery operated clock here. Yeah, he's one of those dudes, but he is as entertaining as they come. He's another guy who can tell a damn story and make it like it's the most exciting thing in the history.
Did you know how many astronauts died in 1968?
2.
8. And then 2 more in 69.
What happened? What are they doing? Flying into space?
Accidents. His father, Prescott Bush, started the CIA. His father, Prescott Bush, financed the Nazis through Union Bank. That's not a conspiracy theory.
Wait, hold on, Eddie.
It's all CIA. You know, in Sweden, for many years, they sterilized kids that didn't have perfectly symmetrical faces.
Is that a fact?
That's actually not true.
That's some eugenics. That's some serious shit. That's why they're so good looking. Because I don't know, Eddie. No, look into it. You think that's crazy?
Wait a minute. When you say look into it, did you look into it?
I got on the internet. Everything that's coming through the major news networks all have an agenda behind it, whether it's because if I was running shit and they said, hey, what do you think we should do? I'm like, wait a minute, are you guys controlling the media, first of all? If they say, no, we're not really controlling the media, they do whatever they want, I would say, control the goddamn media. What the fuck are you guys doing? I get my information at the library, guys. I go to the library.
Apple bottom. I'm so
Go on
bummed.
the fucking internet.
Who goes to the library?
I go to the
these days?
library. You guys get your information from the internet. I go to the library.
I love
libraries?
how you say the internet as if it's all the same source.
He was in this amazing documentary, just a fucking life-changing documentary called The Principle. Have you seen that?
No, I've not.
Fuck. Yeah, Michio Kaku's in it. A bunch of physicists, like professors from MIT.
That's so funny,
I
man.
just saw
It's
that
the best.
documentary, Sugar-Coated.
Oh my God.
Have you seen it?
It's terrifying.
Holy shit. Real quick documentary. This is one that I've watched over and over. It's really, really good.
If you say it's the best of all time, I'm freak out.
No, it's not. It's not. But it's really, really good. Because especially for conspiracy theorist type,
Okay.
it's called How Big Oil Conquered the World. There's a
Right? He's like one of those dudes that will make the story exciting no matter what it is. So, but even more than that, speaking of Eddie Bravo, he is a guy who, within jiu-jitsu, he created his own kind of technique within the sport. And the old guard kind of like got a little bit butthurt by it, but the shit was revolutionary. And he went out to Brazil where they, they created jiu-jitsu. It's called Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and beat the guys in his weight class that were supposed to be the best from Brazil in the old guard of jiu-jitsu. And it shocked the whole entire world of MMA, or not MMA, but jiu-jitsu, because nobody's supposed to beat those guys. And he created his own form of jiu-jitsu, employing this thing called the rubber guard and some other stuff. I mean, I'm revolutionary. Like, so this dude also, let me give some respect to his group. He formed this thing called 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu, and they have gyms everywhere now, I believe. But yeah, this dude formed his own freaking brand of jiu-jitsu out of nothing. So he's a guy who deserves a great deal of respect. Now he's going to get you, like, if you talk to him for 5 minutes, he's going to find a conspiracy in something. So be prepared for that. But anyway, those are the guys he used to have on. And then he moved to Austin, and his guest list changed dramatically. So we'll get to that in a minute. But the first time I noticed Joe starting to kind of like change a little bit was, I think, around 2017. He was talking to an ex-football player who also I respect a lot. His name is Arian Foster. I think he's a seeker of truth and a person who cares about other people. And he is an athlete who kind of carves his own path, and respect him a lot. But anyway, he was talking to Arian Foster about the moon landing and about his doubts about the moon landing, which there are very good reasons to believe that we didn't go to the moon, but that's a whole nother story. But Arian Foster asked him why he kind of changed his tune about the moon landing, meaning he kind of backed off of it a little bit. And his response was, well, I just know that I don't know enough to opine about the moon landing, right? So naturally, my question was, well, what?
From like being a moon landing denier to like,
That's a good question.
Crazy if you don't.
No, I don't think we're crazy. No, this is my take on it. Absolutely, I don't know enough about astrophysics, about space travel, about the science that's the work that's been done about how to get a rocket to the moon and back. I definitely don't know enough.
It's rocket science.
And I've looked at a lot of very compelling documentaries that explain why they think it was hoaxed. And they'll show you some footage, and you can look at some of the footage, and it looks fake as fuck. There's some footage that, to me, looks really doctored. There's
to this day?
Yeah, to this day. Okay. There's some when you ever seen ones where it looks like they're on wires, like the astronauts are on wires?
I have.
There's some where there's a video where they look like they're on a trampoline. They're bouncing around on trampolines. The physics are different in different videos. This is where it gets weird. Like the physics are different from the Apollo 11 moon landing. We see them waddle around on the surface of the moon. They're moving at like half speed. And then you see them in other ones, like the one where they bounce around the air. You're like, wow, they're moving different. They're in the same thing, but it looks different. The first one was very grainy. They showed it on a projection screen. There's a couple different possibilities. One possibility is it just looks weird because it's on the moon, and your brain is trying to interpret it, and your brain's going, well, that's fake, because you don't really understand what 1/6 Earth's gravity really does to a body. That's one possibility. Another possibility, which has been shown to be true, is that some of the stuff that they passed off as being legitimate photographs of space travel was actually test runs where they blacked out the background and pretended that they were in space. And there's one really clear example of this. It's Michael Collins. Michael Collins, who was a guy who was aboard Apollo 11. And Gemini 15. There's a photo of him in the middle of a, what is it when they walk around outside the spacewalk? They call it a spacewalk? Why does that seem like a bad word? It's like spacewalk. Like if it doesn't seem like that's the official title. Well, it's in the middle of a spacewalk.
It's probably something more.
Yeah,
a little more syllables.
Yeah, something slicker. Anyway, so he's doing the spacewalk and he's got this harness on. He's holding on to this like thing, and it was apparently just an image that had already been published of him in a training exercise, and they blacked out the background and flipped the picture upside down.
That's the joint right there.
It's the same exact photo. Same exact photo. I mean, people have lined it up and switched it over. It's the same photo. It's just been edited. So the one on the left was them practicing how to use these. I don't guess that the harness is some sort of a thing that he's hanging on to. I guess it moves him around a little bit. They were trying to practice it on the left, and on the right, they just passed it off. But those are publicity photos, right? So you got to go, well, okay, well, who approves of publicity photos? It could easily be just some idiot who works in the publicity department who did marketing, who didn't think they had enough photos from the moon that were good of spacewalks. It's probably insanely difficult to take a spacewalk photo. So does that mean that they faked the moon landing? No, but it means that people fake things. So you got to got to be really objective and looking at that. Okay, so people say fake things. They definitely filmed a lot of the training exercises that they did of the moon landing. They filmed a lot of shit. They definitely did. If that has already been proven that they took this fake photograph and they tried to pass it off as a real spacewalk, it's entirely possible that some of the stuff that they filmed, they made out to look like they were on the moon when they were not.
Right, because nothing changed. Joe opines about stuff he doesn't know anything about all the time, right? He opines about vaccines. He doesn't know anything about vaccines. He opines about health. Doesn't know anything about health. Like he used to kill chiropractic. Doesn't know the first thing about chiropractic. He's absolutely wrong. Let me not say wrong. I don't believe in that word, but he is absolutely unfounded in any of his opinions about chiropractic because he literally just has a bad idea, a negative interpretation of it, probably expressed to him by a bunch of his buddies. Does not know a thing about it, but the point is that he talks about things he doesn't know about all the time. Nothing changed. No information came out. Nothing. Anyway, the point is that his opinion changed about it for some reason, and his explanation did not hold up to mustard. So that's the first kind of like hint that I was like, what the hell, right? So he still was a guy who I felt like cared about people. He did a interview with Ben Shapiro back in, can't remember how long ago that was, but it was wild, maybe 2016, 2017, something around that time, and made him look like the fool he absolutely is. Ben Shapiro, like a lot of people think he's an intellect. He's absolutely not. You cannot be an intellect if you lead people astray. You cannot be an intellect if you're just a propagandist who's making money off of being a particular persuasion, and all you do is defend that persuasion, whether it's right wing, left wing, whether it's being Jewish or not being Jewish, whether it's being whatever it is. You cannot be considered an intellect if you are a propagandist, and by propagandist I mean all you do is spin your own facts to make your particular persuasion look better than it actually is. So, there's an official definition of propaganda. I don't have it pulled up, but so Ben Shapiro's an absolute imbecile with respect to intellect, because he not only does he miss the boat on most things he's talking about, because he's one-sided. Like I saw him recently, like, have a guest on denying the JFK assassination conspiracy, which is insane, because nobody with any brains would, at this point, we have so much information. We know, basically at this point, we know everything except who pulled the trigger. We know who was behind the plot. Jimgarrison in 1967 basically knew all of the players at that time. So, but anyway, there's a reason why somebody who has access to the information he has is propagating certain false narratives, but clearly is not a person that you can call an intellectual. Okay. Then with Joe Rogan, though, the left started to turn on him, and I defended him in my early podcast during that time. They were calling him a right winger, and because he would have guests on that the left felt like shouldn't be on, right? What was that guy's name? Milo Yiannopoulos was one guest he had on that was kind of super controversial, and a lot of people didn't think he should have on. But then, he had on a lot of hunters, which the left didn't like. And then he would have on, I think he had on Gavin McInnes, who's a right-wing white Christian nationalist supremacist. And the left did not like the fact that he had those people on. Now, you can argue about whether or not you would like him to have those people on, but that doesn't necessarily make him a right winger if he wants to listen to different opinions, right? So the left became really harsh towards him and started calling him a shill for the right and all this. And I actually did a podcast defending him. And in that video he did with Ben Shapiro, he really made Ben look like an idiot, right? Because they was talking about race in America and the consequences of slavery and America's oppression, and Ben Shapiro had nothing for him because Ben Shapiro doesn't care about the facts. He cares about his propaganda.
Is there middle ground? So if we look at 1776 and we look at the Declaration of Independence and we look at America today in 2020, there clearly is some impact in the echoes of slavery, and then after that, Jim Crow. There's clearly some impact in these deeply impoverished communities that don't seem to advance.
Yes. So to make the argument about institutional racism, there's a couple ways you can read this. When people say systemic racism or institutional racism, I usually ask them to be a little more specific in what they mean, because there are a few ways you can read that. One is history has impact. Of course, that's true, right? That's true for everybody. It's true in your family history. Right? If you have a grandfather who went to prison on a particular charge, that leads to poverty for your parents, which led to more poverty for you. Right? People have histories. Those histories are embedded in their life experiences, and that's true for societies as well. All of that is for sure true. Then there's the question as to whether the institutions today are racist, and that's not quite the same thing, right? Because history has consequences is not the same thing as saying the rules today are racist, because the rules today are not racist. Actually, the rules today are quite not racist. So,
but historically, it's fairly recent. If you go from the civil rights movement to 2020, we're really not talking about that much time. We're talking
3
about
generations,
50 plus years,
60 years. Yeah, I mean it's
50 plus.
Right,
in the world of
in the vast span of human history, it's not
a very small amount of time.
Right.
So clearly, there's some impact of both racism and then Jim Crow laws. So that's where I'm saying there's a middle ground.
Yeah, and it is important for people on my side of the aisle, conservatives, to acknowledge and recognize the importance of history in people's living situations now. And it's important for people on the other side of the aisle to, at the same time, not attribute every single thing to history, because
but
people
isn't
who
there
are born
always something like that? There's always like extremes on each position, and the truth lies somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, but I don't think that it lies as far in the dead center of that as people, I think, want it to. What I mean by that is the problems that have plagued communities in the United States, not just the black community in the United States, but problems of racism or problems of sexism. The way those get alleviated is people making better choices over time. Right? That is the problem. That's the way that those issues get alleviated. When Jews arrived in the United States in the early 20th century, to talk of my people, when they came, they were impoverished. They didn't speak the language. They were banned from country clubs. There was open discrimination against them. They were banned from Harvard. Right? Harvard Law School had quotas on Jews. The way to fight against that is to make good decisions. And so you fight against the system to make sure that the system has rules that apply equally to everyone.
Right, but you clearly see that there's a big difference between people coming over here willingly and doing so in order to better their lives versus someone whose ancestors were dragged over here to be sold as property, and then dealing with the repercussions of that being your family history. And red line laws and all the other things that were put in place to sort of keep them in very specific areas, which to this day remain crime-ridden, gang-ridden, deeply impoverished communities.
Well, that's true, but the question is how much of that is historic redlining and how much of that is an 18-year-old kid today deciding to pick up a gun and shoot somebody?
But how much of that 18-year-old kid today deciding to pick up a gun and shoot somebody is based on him growing up in this fucked up environment where that's what he models, where everything around him is crime and gangs, and you imitate your atmosphere, which is what all humans do.
Right, but the answer is there's only one way to break that chain.
What way is that?
That way is to not pick up a gun and shoot somebody.
I think that's a simplistic way of looking at it if you're on the outside of that community and you're not one of those 18-year-old kids that grows up with the incredible influence of all the people around him, and that's all you see, and that's all you know.
Well, but the problem is the only way that's going to be the thing that your kid doesn't know is for you not to do it. At some point, personal agency has to come in.
It does,
because
education and teaching them about personal agency and letting them understand that there's a way out of this and that the path that they see being replicated over and over again by these people that wind up dying young, that wind up going to jail, that there are other options. There's a lot of kids that never get that other information. Or if they get it, they get little blips of it, but the vast majority of the information, the vast majority of the influence they get is terrible.
Well, I totally agree with this. And this is why I think the worst thing that you can say to a kid is you're born behind the 8 ball and no matter what you do, you're not going to succeed.
Yes,
right? That's literally the worst thing you can say to a kid. What you should be saying is, look at how your grandfather was born behind the 8 ball and look how hard he had to work in order to get ahead. And look at all the opportunities.
That's true, though. But if your grandfather wasn't ahead, didn't get ahead, if your grandfather was in and out of jail, if your father was in and out of jail, everyone around you is like that, if there's literally no influence that's positive in your life, the idea of saying to a kid like that, hey, don't pick up a gun and shoot somebody, that's way too simplistic a version of their future, in my
Well, I mean,
opinion.
the problem is I don't see an alternative solution. When you're talking about solutions,
I think an alternative solution is there has to be some sort of large-scale intervention in these communities to do something about what has already been set in motion and the momentum that keeps continuing decade after decade.
Anyway, the left was on his case, and I was a big defender of him. And then the left criticism kind of became nonstop for a while. So to sum it up, guys, Joe Rogan, BC, which is Joe Rogan before the change, was a guy who I respected a ton. He had compassion. He was a super knowledgeable guy. I mean, he had a lot of information in his brain that he could just rattle off back to back to back. He was insightful but inquisitive and was interested in the truth, interested in facts, interested in learning more, not interested in propaganda and but more than that, his guest list was way better. The entertainment value of his show was way better. BC, before the change, but his tone started to change. The left started to criticize him a lot more about things, and I understood it, although I didn't agree at the time, because just because you choose to interview people who you don't agree with or who the mainstream doesn't agree with doesn't make you what they are. So I was, at this point, 100% Team Rogan. And I just want that dude back because I'm not sure where he went. So I hope that this kind of encapsulates what I saw before the change. And please like and subscribe if you are interested in this content. I will have a little bit more content on Joe Rogan. The clips will come out gradually over time. The next clip in the sequence will be Joe Rogan DC during the change. So stay tuned for that one. Please like and subscribe just to get this stuff spread. And like I said, this is not the typical content. This is more personal and pop content. But going forward, it will be a lot more in-depth, and the content will be more related to issues relating to humanity and improving the quality of our existence together. So have a fantastic day. I hope to talk to you soon.
Push the goddamn button!
Push the goddamn button!
You heard what she said.
So now I'm kind of going into his change, like when it happened and what was going on around that time. Then there became a big backlash from the comedians from the left, because the left was just deciding to shout down everybody, right? They shouted down at Evergreen College one of the professors for deciding that he wanted to have class on a day where they felt like certain people shouldn't have to go to school or something. I mean, the details are fuzzy. I knew about them back then. This was probably 15 years ago or so, maybe 12 years ago. I'm not sure, but the left was really kind of being anti-left in terms of free speech. Like allow people to have their say. If you have a different opinion, then voice it to them and endeavor to convince them otherwise, even with white supremacists, there's an opportunity for learning for both sides. And the emotional reaction to shout them down indicates more weakness with respect to having an intellectual position about something and being able to explain to someone how their ideas are off base. Okay, so then the transgender issues became a thing, and that really kind of pushed him in the left side to the brink, because he has certain opinions about transgender issues that bothered the left, and that kind of like alienated him more with respect to the left. And then this bullshit lie that the right has created, or the so-called right has created, called wokeness, which they have hijacked the term, turned it against the people that created the term, right? Like,
here's the one thing I'll admit, okay? There are a lot of Republicans who don't know what they mean when they use this word. But that just gives an opportunity to the left to ridicule Republicans, when what we actually need to do as Republicans is to take the debate to their turf and win. So you don't know what woke means.
And probably fewer of them consider themselves to be woke. And so, when we talk about traditional...
What does that mean to you? Would you mind defining woke? Because it's come up a couple times, and I just want to make sure we're on the same page.
So, I mean, woke is sort of the idea that... This is going to be one of those moments that goes viral. I mean, woke is something that's very hard to define, and we've spent an entire chapter defining it. it is sort of the understanding that we need to
pause it. Just to be clear, I mean, she spent an entire chapter dedicated to woke, but to actually define it,
to totally reimagine and redo society in order to create hierarchies of oppression. Sorry, it's hard to explain in a 15-second soundbite.
Yeah, look, your time.
So woke, right? Like my respect for Rogan's intellect started to fade a great deal when he started using the term woke like it actually meant something, without recognizing that the term was created in the Black community to explain or to acknowledge that there are forces, which there are and there were forces that are specifically directed at keeping the American dream away from
To this
them.
day, they make fun of Howard Stern because of who he is now and the way he behaves now. That guy's the man. He was the fucking pioneer. When he was the king of all media, and he was telling everybody to suck his dick, and the FCC was going after him, the government was fining him.
Yeah.
They were fining his businesses fucking millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And he was out there doing wild shit on the radio.
He was putting a Klansman on with fucking Young Thug or
and
not
now,
Young Thug.
and now he's woke.
Miami.
It's crazy.
Trick Daddy?
So that's basically what the term woke means. Stay woke for the forces that are illegally or inappropriately attempting to keep you in a situation that's non-prosperous.
Firstly, woke to white ignorance, it means anything they don't like. That's what they have made woke to mean. If they don't like that the Little Mermaid is black, right, it's woke. If they don't like that they're teaching about black history, it's woke. If they don't like, the stop sign is red or something, it's woke. It's literally anything. They've managed to the word to encompass anything that white ignorance on the right do not like. Into that. The second issue is that woke already has a definition.
So that's what woke is. It's nothing to do with any gay issues. It's nothing to do with any, but then they created a bunch of terms to mean the same thing. Basically, all of these terms are just anti-Americans of slave descent terms. Okay. Rogan wasn't smart enough to recognize that, and he began to use that term. And then the COVID conspiracy showed up, and he further got alienated from the left because of that, which, there are things to question, and typically there are lies told, and lies don't have a label, right? The left tells lies, the right tells lies. In this last decade, though, the right has cornered the market on lying because, their fearless leader is the most unable person to tell the truth that's ever existed. Okay, so, but the point is that there were valid questions about COVID, and the left wasn't hearing it, basically. So that further alienated him. So then there was the homeless issue. So Joe Rogan decided he was going to leave California because it was too left for him. And as he said, the left left him. He didn't leave the left, right? So,
Texas.
I got a farm in Vermont.
Yeah.
It's a little cold.
Vermont's cold. I just want to go somewhere in the center of the country, somewhere it's easier to travel to both places, and somewhere where you have a little bit more freedom. Also, I think that where we live right here in Los Angeles is overcrowded. And I think most of the time that's not a problem. But I think it's exposing the fact that it's a real issue when you look at the number of people that are catching COVID because of this overpopulation issue. When you look at the traffic, when you look at the economic despair, when you look at the homelessness problem that's accelerated radically over the last 6, 7, 10 years, I think there's too many people here. I think it's not tenable. I don't think it's manageable. And I think every mayor does a shit job of doing it because I don't think anybody could do a great job of it. I think there's like certain things you're going to have to deal with when you have a population of whatever the fuck LA is. It's like 20 million plus people.
It's too many people.
It's too many people. Yeah, that's what I think. I think where you're living is probably the perfect way to do it.
It's 500 people.
That's nuts. But then you got those dudes yelling at you, "Where's the deer?" You don't even understand the language.
I could go on. We could.
Then his guests began to change drastically, and the show wasn't as entertaining because he didn't have his crew. He didn't have the same types of guests. You know, a lot of his guests were from the West Coast and kind of in LA, and a lot of, I guess, they just couldn't get up to Austin. So his guest list started to change dramatically, and it was less informative and became much more political. So, but then what really, really, really started to flip the script in a way that he could not recover from was, I mean, because Spotify, I think, happened in 2020 where he got that big deal. So he had already started to kind of like move to what we would call, or what people would call, the right before that. But he got the Spotify deal. Now, unfortunately, when you have a guy or a group that's giving you $100 million, you're no longer independent media. You walk to the beat of a drummer at that point, unfortunately, which, in my opinion, has some relationship with how and why he has changed his stance on a lot of things. But in 2022, I believe, a video was shown with Joe Rogan saying the N-word repeatedly. And it was the most bizarre thing I've ever seen, because it's like, why do that? It wasn't like he was talking to black people in a negative way. He was just saying the word with the hard R over. And matter of fact, let me pull that up for you. Like,
and starts calling them niggers. Word nigger. There should be a word like nigger, especially the word nigger. That's our nigger. About niggers. He says nigger. Guy, a nigger. And then our niggers start saying nigger. Allowed to use the word nigger. Out the word nigger. See nigger. Word nigger. Say nigger, and he couldn't say nigger. And most nigger. He takes us there. We get out and we're giggling. Oh, here's he Planet Apes.
So,
we walked into Planet
bizarre.
Apes.
Why is he?
We walked into Africa, dude. We walked in the door and there was no white people. I'm making this video to talk about the most regretful and shameful thing that I've ever had to talk about publicly. There's a video that's out that's a compilation of me saying the N-word. And it looks fucking horrible, even to me. And there's another clip that I have to address. I was telling a story on the podcast about how me and my friend Tommy and his girlfriend, we got really high. We were in Philadelphia and we didn't know where we were going. We just got dropped off by a cab and we got dropped off in this all black neighborhood. And I was trying to make the story entertaining. And I said, we got out and it was like we were in Africa. It's like we were in Planet of the Apes. And I was just trying to be entertaining. I certainly wasn't trying to be racist. And I certainly would never want to offend someone for entertainment with something as stupid as racism. It makes me sick watching that video.
I'm going to leave it at that. Yeah, that dropped and there's no coming back from that. So in summary of Joe Rogan DC, which is Joe Rogan during the change, this is when you saw him starting to get more frustrated with the left, but also they were already frustrated with him and they started calling him out on some of his guests and some things that he was doing. So, I get the cognitive dissonance between who he was BC and who he is now during the change. But then things started irking me, like the word woke became the so-called right wing's dog whistle for really all things anti-Americans of slave descent. They lumped it into, when they started talking about woke, they lumped in every group that they didn't like into woke, which is exactly what woke is not. Woke is specifically pertaining to dark skinned, the Americans of slave descent. But Joe Rogan has proximity to plenty of Americans of slave descent, and he chose not to listen to them because I'm sure some of them told him what woke actually meant and to stop using it. So the word woke is actually a propaganda tool that the so-called right used to mount a force of resistance regarding all the groups that they didn't like. But then they started a cacophony of these terms that basically just galvanized the right against the people that they just didn't like. But unfortunately, the terms really just related to the so-called black people or the Americans of slave descent that live here. And, it started out with Black Lives Matter, right? That was a pejorative. Okay. Now here's the deal. The organization Black Lives Matter was a fucking shit show, but the idea behind it was a bunch of black men were obviously murdered inappropriately in America back to back to back. And it was nothing but a reaffirmation of what we have all been through as Americans of slave descent in this country. Police fear, police brutality, police disregard for the lives of Americans of slave descent. That's what it was. The pushback was. Now, the organization, I got nothing to say about them because they were a fucking shit show, and they did more to hurt than they did to help. But the idea was let's try and do something about this parade of Americans of slave descent getting murdered by the cops. So that became a term. Then woke became a thing. It got bastardized to become a pejorative that meant anybody that the so-called right didn't like, right? And then critical race theory, right? Which was never taught in any elementary, but although they just figured out a way to make it up, the orange dude in the White House sees a freaking video of a guy talking about critical race theory, and all of a sudden, critical race theory is a problem. Critical race theory is it's a legal academic undertaking that was only done at the highest levels in academia and law at Harvard. And it's been around since the 70s. So how did critical race theory become a problem as soon as Donald Trump saw some guy talking about it on TV when it's been around since the 70s? The answer is it hasn't, but guess what? It was another way for the so-called right to galvanize themselves against the interests of Americans of slave descent in this country. But it was basically lied about and turned into this thing that it absolutely wasn't. Propagandized. It's just amazing how many parallels there are in this country to what happened in Germany in the 30s. And then last is DEI, right? Like, DEI is these 13% of people in this country that have these terms that are perceived to be such a threat is just insane to me, that this is the biggest concern you have. DEI, okay? This gave the so-called right the opportunity to basically show their racism in full view. There was complaints about, we were supposed to be post-racial, right? And then we got a black mermaid or a dark-skinned mermaid, and then all hell breaks loose. And then they're talking about having a dark-skinned James Bond, and more hell breaks loose. And then by the way, my next episode will be on race. So I'm gonna introduce this term to you guys. Classic. I'm gonna say classic American racism became in full view as a result of the creation of this term DEI. So they were able to just say what they wanted to say. There were people like, what's that host that just basically was racist with respect to James Bond and the mermaid?
But the idea that you would even contemplate having a black James Bond suddenly becomes, it's a need. It's being pushed on us. It's being jammed down our throat.
I wonder what Crowder's response would be whenever like Scarlett Johansson plays the character that was originally Asian or something like that.
Ghost
if he
in the
says
Shell,
maybe
yeah.
people are reacting too negatively toward
Right, of course. But continue here. Let's hear his complaint that we need a black James Bond.
A black James Bond. This is the issue when people talk about it. It's like you're injecting race where it doesn't need to be. And let me just say this one thing. This is one area when people talk about a black James Bond. There is no lack of representation of black American men in the action hero genre. If you were to have Will Smith at his peak, right? Will Smith, Men in Black, Independence Day, and run it opposite a James Bond vehicle on the same weekend, Will Smith would have decimated it. Will Smith,
Easily.
Denzel Washington, for crying out loud, they tried to sell us Jamie Foxx as an action hero. Shaq. There are plenty of black male action heroes.
Richard Roundtree is and will always be the only Shaft.
He will only
anybody
be
says.
the only one.
Yeah.
Well, I think it makes sense to have a black James Bond. I don't have a problem with it because you're pulling from
It
a
makes
culture.
zero
His name's
sense.
I think it's perfectly fine.
Really, it makes sense to
Ian
have Idris
Fleming is a
Elba
white.
on a tarmac undercover in Siberia. Where is the spy? I don't know. The only not white thing in whole peripheral.
Yeah, it's not good when it's like, we're going to need you to be at the ball and ready to meet our contact at 11:43, and then they're like, guys, it's 1:30.
Where is our spy? Look, the script would have to change a little, granted. No, but I think you...
Did you turn my Ferragamos into a phone?
In Steven Crowder's precious world of MI6 agents, there's only one agent. There's only one agent.
All agents are white guys.
And so if you have James Bond, he can't be sent to pose as a Russian guy. Like, there's no other countries in the world. Now, it was never a problem, like, what are we going to do that James Bond is white? How are we going to put him on a mission to maybe, like,
the Middle
East? I don't know, get something in the Middle East.
Yeah,
that's what.
right.
I mean, like.
But in addition to that, you had every right winger in their mother talking about how they'd be scared if they saw this person in this position and he was black, thinking that he got it from DEI, which is just fucking insane. Like, anyway, so that's basically what Joe Rogan decided to start parroting when he used the term woke. All of those, or those propagandized terms, were baked into wokeism. And like I said, he knows enough Americans of slave descent to know that that's not what woke actually means, but he began using it on a regular basis. And then obviously in 2022, the video of him using the N-word comes out, and now he's got really no way to kind of like reconnect with the left. So he's kind of stuck. And on top of it, it did not seem, because Spotify didn't respond. You know, I might add, the BlackRock invested Spotify, didn't respond. They had no, you know how publications or big companies will make a statement when somebody does something that's pretty egregious. And to be honest, like, he wasn't even using the word pejoratively when he started saying the racism stuff. And I tried to understand it, but his apology was so terrible that it didn't really matter. So, sadly, I think, that brother Joe Rogan, BC, is gone forever. The guy who's introspective and thoughtful. Matter of fact, Joe Rogan was before the change. He was so caring that he used to cry, like just when emotional topics would come up. Like the dude was compassionate. Now I don't know what the hell he is, but he does not point out any of the injustices, and there are amazing amounts at this point of ridiculous things that are happening in terms of the social implications and social the degradation of groups, and the system. Just the everyday discourse now is allowed to be classic American racism at its finest. The term racism itself is neutral. We'll get into that in the next episode. Anyway, but the classic American racism is the pejorative part, where it's tied to white supremacy and tied to demeaning others and feeling like others' lives aren't as important as yours, right? So anyways, Spotify did not care, and I guess all gloves came off after that point, because they gave him another $250 million, and here we are. So anyway, that is Joe Rogan, DC. Joe Rogan during the change. Next, we'll talk about Joe Rogan AD, which is Joe Rogan after the death of his integrity. Okay? So I hope you liked the video. Subscribe, hit the like button, subscribe. That's what I'm supposed to say. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. I don't want to make it like I dislike the guy, but I dislike people who are behaving in ways that are contrary to the interests of humanity. So I don't want to make it seem like I hate the guy, which I don't. And I don't know if I hate anybody. Have a good one, you guys, and talk to you soon.
Push the goddamn button! Push the goddamn button! You heard what she said.
So, I suspect that there's there is a grouping of things that happen that push Joe Rogan to the so-called right, and not all of them are the fact that he is quote unquote a right winger. Some of them have to do with the fact that he got alienated from the left in certain ways, and recognized that there was no coming back from certain things that he had done. And on top of it, he got the Spotify deal, and he recognized that he has a strong base with the people who are not concerned about some of the stuff that he said and did. Matter of fact, applaud it and want more of it. And he had a firm base with the so-called right. So, and it wasn't hurting his ratings. His ratings were still strong, and he still had the biggest podcast in America, and it didn't go away. So he kind of fully leaned into his right wing rantings, and his guest list was so far right, it was insane. And I did some looking up of the data of his guest list after he moved to Austin, and it was a complete opposite of anything he was doing in LA. His guest list was basically nothing but neutral or right-wing guests. Every blue moon, he would have a quote-unquote left-winger on there, but other than that, it was ridiculous. I'll show some stats of that shortly. but then he began to do stuff that was much more egregious, and now he basically just says the most idiotic things over and over again. And it's crazy to me, like, that I respected a guy who has just completely turned a back on who he used to be. He in 2015, 2016, he clearly knew who Donald Trump was. He refused to support him because of the things that he does and says and who he is. And he endorsed him in 2024. So how do you make a turn that's basically the opposite of your entire being from 2016 to 2024? So anyway, he praises the press secretaries for Donald Trump, who are just lying to you 100% of the time because they have to cover up for his lies. He praises he praises people like Elon Musk, who are of the South African, how shall I say this, European supremacist group, along with Peter Thiel and others, who have a disdain for the dark-skinned people and Americans of slave descent. He doesn't say anything about the constant destruction of the norms and rules and laws with respect to American democracy.
He makes it seem like the far left is out there doing these massive protests like, we need more women with beards in bathrooms or something. Like, what? You're in your own head, bro. You've taken, like, the comic book caricature of what a lefty is, and you run with it. You're running with, like, what Jesse Waters' idea of a far leftist is. He doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about, and you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I'm in these left-wing spaces. People are like, hey, let's stop wars. Let's stop the genocide. Let's give everybody health care. It's kind of crazy that we live in the richest country in the world, but we don't have universal health care, and seemingly every other country was able to fucking figure that shit out. Oh my God.
Name of compassion. Like, this is fucking insane. That they have to figure that puzzle out. Because right now they lost to Trump, and they're in this scattered thing where they're trying to shit on everything he does, hide all the good stuff.
Hide all the good stuff. What good stuff, Joe? What fucking good stuff? Is the good stuff the fact that inflation is now skyrocketing? Is the good stuff the fact that the economy is now slowing down and we're entering a recession? Is that the good stuff? Is the dumb trade war with all of our allies, is that the good stuff? Is the rounding up innocent people and sending them to a concentration camp? Is that the good stuff? Is the good stuff illegally bombing Iran? How about illegally bombing Yemen? How about illegally bombing Somalia? Is that the good stuff? What's the fucking good stuff? Illegally invading California using the Marines? Is that the good stuff? What good stuff? There's no fucking good stuff. Stop fucking gaslighting us. There is no good stuff. Oh my God. I'm still not done. See, he can't help himself. Here he goes. Again, shitting on the left.
The weirdest thing to me is that we're in this complete shifting of the polls where the Republicans now are in favor of free speech. The Republicans want to end the wars. They want to stop contributing to foreign countries. They want comedy to be comedy again.
Somebody's got to take his mic away from him, bro. I'm sorry. That's the point we're at. Somebody's got to take this dumbass's mic away from him. He has no idea what he's talking. Oh, the Republicans are the ones that are anti-war now. All the Republicans were cheerleading the bombing of Iran, the illegal and offensive bombing of Iran, a country that didn't attack us, and they weren't even building a nuke, despite the lies that the regime tells.
We are all humans, and the goal is for us to exist together and do what's the best for the most, in my opinion. Now, there's most of the people in the world really don't feel that way. They used to admit or believe or say that they believe that way, but then their actions over the last decade have completely been the opposite of that. So the problem I have is that, how is it? And I have family members and close people, friends that I love, still love, but I have disdain for I have a lot of respect for the men And women they might be, but I have a lot of disdain for the human beings that they are. And it's hard for me to reconcile those two things. And I'm still wrestling with that because I don't know what to do about it. My goal is to make this world a better place by helping people understand each other. And when I see that you have chosen to accept, like Nazi Germany didn't happen because one guy named Hitler just rode in on a horse and decided to take over. No, there had to be support for his activities because some people thought that even though he was doing inhuman things to certain groups of people, it was better for them, or they decided to stay silent or accept it tacitly because it was better for them. So it's hard for me to respect the humanity in people who are watching Nazi Germany happen before our eyes and don't say anything. So, and this is not political. This is a human statement. It's not a political statement. It has nothing to do with the right and the left, because the people who believe in the right and left, they don't even have any idea that they don't even exist. The right and left doesn't exist. Like I've asked people, what does it mean? You say you're conservative. What does that mean? They got no answer. They have no idea, because they know if they say what conservative used to mean 25 years ago, they can't say that they're that, because nothing in the people that they voted for has been that, right? So what is it? What does it mean to be conservative? So, or what does it mean to be liberal, right? It doesn't mean to go shout down professors at Evergreen College because they disagree with the fact that you think certain people should not have to come to school, right? So, this podcast is about telling you the truth. It's not about sugarcoating it. It's about telling you the truth and helping create solutions, which is what I don't see a lot of podcasts doing, right? They're bad-mouthing the other side, and some of them point out facts, but they're still bad-mouthing the other side, like the Meidastouch, right? I believe that they're a fact-based organization, but all they do is talk about the negatives about Trump supporters, basically, and Trump himself. So, and I'm okay with you telling the truth, right? But you can't it's just propaganda when you're only pointing to the negatives of one group of people. And you're not pointing out that the Democratic Party is being paid off by the same people that are getting paid off by the Republican Party. You're not pointing out that the reason why the Democrats are so impotent in their defense of American democracy is because they have to abide by the rules of the people who pull the strings, like AIPAC and the CIA and big business who are paying them. There's a reason why all politicians go in with meager wealth profiles and come out multi-millionaires. There's a reason for that. And that is why American democracy has never been what you thought it was. So going forward, these episodes will be even more to the point. They'll tell you more truths about the lies that you have no idea about. They're going to go into who is actually pulling the strings, what we can do to change the entire dynamic of American democracy so that we actually get to experience it. Most people have no idea that we have literally never voted for our president since November 22nd, 1963. And I'm going to leave it right there. As I said, going forward, each episode will, at the end of it, have a list of people who are the architects of the Matrix who are basically pulling the strings.
Who are you? I am the architect. I created the Matrix.
The agents of the Matrix who want to keep you blind. And the rebellion, the people who actually are interested in telling you the truth and helping you to understand the dangerous times we are living in, the truly, truly, truly dangerous times we're living in. The only reason I'm doing this podcast is because I'm scared to death. I'm scared to death for my kids, my two children, and I'm scared to death for the future of this democratic republic. And I have been saying this for 10 years. And exactly what I thought was going to happen has happened. I never thought that we would allow the degradation of the norms, rules, and laws to get this far. But we are in very, very, very dire times, and no one seems to care. Now, I have done some preparing, and I hope you do the same, and we can talk about that in future episodes as well. Thank you. Please hit the like and subscribe button. So, in summary, folks, this is Joe Rogan AD. Joe Rogan after the death of his integrity. So, to summarize, it's an incredible transformation that I witnessed from 2012, let's say, to 2025. I can't believe what I'm watching. And he made a 180-degree shift in his humanity. Again, like I told you, I'm not political. I am apolitical. I am pro-humanity, though. And that is what really has gotten to me the most with regards to his change, is his lack of humanity and lack of acknowledging the absolute human rights destructions that are taking place under this regime. I mean, he began to just basically, like, in the after the death of his integrity, all he did every step of the way was point out problems on the left. Okay. Which of course there are. So, but when you don't point out any of the problems on the right, and you celebrate the people who are causing the major human rights violations and law breaking and destruction of American democracy and insurrections and stuff, it's just incredible to me. So, I did my own research. As a matter of fact, just to see if his demographics of his guest list changed as much as I thought they did, and it was unbelievable. Obviously, there's going to be a graphic in here that shows the overwhelmingly right and libertarian, which is nearly the same slant of his guest list. Was like 88% out of his guests were either right or libertarian, and the rest were either neutral or left. Okay, which is crazy, right? Before that, there was just no political. Like Joe Rogan BC was apolitical. So he went and signed another deal with Spotify. The BlackRock invested Spotify, and they don't care. They like it. They like what's going on because they haven't said a word. They haven't changed anything, and he is all the way right. And then he'll just like tacitly like make a statement, just dip his toes in the water of criticizing so-called right-wing stuff and Trump and all that, but it's not genuine at all. Otherwise, he would tell the truth about it. But he doesn't. He just dips his toe in the water just to see how far his base will rebel, but they never do, because there's a lot of lack of integrity in this world as we sit. So then, he just starts to say just stupid stuff all the time. Like he's not, in my estimation, what I would call a stupid guy. But now he says verifiably super stupid stuff that's just like insane. Like one day he was like he's not anti-woke. Let me pull that up for you. All right. Add the scene. Here we go. Okay.
But first, let's hear what he has to say, and then I want to explain to you why I think he's so freaking confused.
Another article the other day about us being an anti-woke comedy scene. Like, look, why not just do great stuff? Go do great stuff. Don't worry about what we're doing. And we're not anti-woke.
My friend, my brother in Christ, if you're not anti-woke, nobody is. There's nobody more anti-woke on the planet, certainly in the entertainment industry, than you. You're the guy. It has been the most animating issue of your life the last 5 years. I wouldn't know how to understand you or your place in American society if it wasn't for you being a crusader against what people consider to be woke.
There's no anti-woke. There's like a ton of left-wing comics at the mothership.
I looked on the Comedy Mothership website. That's not necessarily incorrect. A ton might be a bit of a strong word, but it's not exclusively for the anti-woke comedians, although the anti-woke comedians appear to have benefited enormously, not merely from the Comedy Mothership, but from the halo of protection that Joe Rogan put around it. But that doesn't mean that that's the only thing performing at the Comedy Mothership. That's true, but of course, that's not really the point. The point is that the people who were anti-woke the most were in many ways part of the Rogan orbit, including but not limited to, and specifically Kill Tony.
It's like that's not what we're talking about.
Yeah,
we're not.
That's exactly what you're talking about, and been talking about it for an extraordinarily long time. Once again, not a little bit. It has been your number one animating issue, to the point that it is very difficult to even understand what place you hold in the entertainment or podcasting industry without it.
I'm going to speed it up.
The entire.
All right, so it looks like Joe Rogan is acting like Joe Rogan again, because he seems to be in denial about the fact that he and his army of so-called healthy fellas are, in reality, just anti-woke comics. That's their entire identity now. So for Rogan to sit there and pretend like he isn't anti-woke might be the funniest thing he's ever said. It's almost like he forgot that there are literally thousands of hours of him ranting about this exact thing online. Like his whole migration to Austin was built around the idea that there was this massive crowd of people desperate for comics to stand up to the woke mob, which of course he knew he could turn into a gold mine. And luckily for us, he documented that entire thought process on his podcast. So when Rogan plays dumb now, acting like he isn't...
It's like, look at his buddies. You endorsed Donald Trump. You've had and platformed Jordan Peterson. You've got Elon Musk, who you've also told the world is a genius. We'll talk about Musk in just a second.
Right.
It's like everything about you, as we understand it in 2025, is a function of being anti-woke. There's very little that has any relationship not to that.
All right. I'm going to pause it, and then I'm going to go to another video that even better illustrates it. And then get here.
The important point in a moment. In 2024, in Sage Journals, academics talked exactly about how Joe Rogan is not just anti-woke, but that everyone sees him that way. Quote, during the Trump presidency, while it was based primarily on YouTube, the Joe Rogan Experience was often criticized for hosting a range of controversial figures associated with the alt-right, or the so-called intellectual dark web, becoming a reference for those dismissing woke culture and social justice warriors from the right. After his podcast was acquired exclusively by Spotify, Rogan received further criticism for defending the use of ivermectin as an alternative cure for COVID-19. They continue. Rogan and his entourage of edgy podcasting comedians, who he frames as, quote, the last line of defense against wokeism, see themselves as playing a key infrastructural.
So he said the term himself, bro. Like, come on now. So, yeah.
Role. They continue again. With time, Rogan's engagement with overtly anti-feminist figures in a time of highly gendered social and political polarization has made the show a point of reference for those preoccupied with the emergence of so-called, quote, woke culture and social justice warriors, usually framed by JRE as unreasonable. Significant.
You get the point. So, yeah, I mean, he'll say some stuff like, I'm not anti-woke. Like somebody will believe him or something. I don't know. But it's stupidity. And it's not what I used to see with regards to my friend Joe Rogan. He refused to endorse Trump. But obviously that's changed dramatically. And then he said the reason he decided to vote for Trump was because Tim Walz embellished the time frame of his military service, right? So, I mean, obviously he called it lying, which, so if him lying about his military service is the reason, and it's stupidity. If Tim Walz lying about his military service, he did serve, right? There's another guy that you supported who faked bone spurs and literally is incapable of telling the truth. Like he doesn't just lie all the time. He's incapable of telling the truth. But the fact that it's beyond ironic that you would say that a guy's one lie is the reason why you chose to move to endorse Donald Trump. It's just like it's just an indication of the stupid stuff he says all the time now. He doesn't comment about the inhumanity of people in masks just taking people off the streets illegally. And all of the stuff that he's doing is illegal. These wars, he's literally killing fishermen like out of nowhere. Like these people aren't drug dealers in Venezuela; they're fishermen. He's just killing people. Like it's called murder. He is an absolute war criminal. He has been. And if you're a right winger or a conservative, that I don't know what that means anymore. Nobody knows what it means anymore. But if you believe in democracy, well, he's the guy that pardoned all of the rioters who decided to try and overthrow the government, right? Like, I mean, I just can't get it through my head how you can justify stupidity by saying things like, oh, it's because Tim Walz changed the time frame at when he served, therefore he had a different rank, right? He lied. Okay. Yeah. So, it's just I can't even put it into words. So you watch Nazi Germany form before your eyes, but you got no words for it. You got the Gestapo in masks, snatching women and babies and macing old people and assaulting, indiscriminately. I mean, think about how much abuse of the law we're seeing. We don't get to see, right? Because, people have cameras, but the cameras aren't everywhere. Because these guys get to wear masks, right? They're upset. There are people who he wants to be there. He's advertising. I mean, he's got funding up the wazoo for this illegal police force. But Joe Rogan has no words for any of it. He's watching Nazi Germany. I mean, he watched Nazi Germany basically come here. It's basically here. When the head of the state, the head of the country decides that he doesn't like you because of you said something about him as in the Columbia student, he can just basically have his masked Gestapo pick you up, then Nazi Germany's here. So he has nothing to say about that, which is just, again, absurd. Like, the guy obviously was hanging out with Epstein. He was his best buddy for a decade. He's got nothing to say about him covering it up, right? And it's like, people talk about a conspiracy. Well, I mean, there's conspiracy theories and there's conspiracy facts. And every day of the administration, we see the fact of them covering stuff up, the conspiracy of them covering stuff up, covering up jailhouse tapes, not letting the Epstein stuff come out, halting votes so that stuff doesn't get seen to the light of day. He does the bidding of everything Israel wants to do. Why? Because they have the goods on him. Everything that Epstein filmed, the Mossad knows. So anyway, my point is that it's just crazy. So, I mean, where the hell, Joe Rogan, please come back, man. I mean, damn, go Joe Rogan BC. I want Joe Rogan BC back. Can Joe Rogan BC please come back? Anyway, that is it for this episode. So hope you liked it. Please hit the button.
Push the goddamn button. Push the goddamn button. You heard what she said.
If you did, next episode we'll be discussing race. It's gonna be a good one, so do not miss it. Have a fantastic rest of your week.